let's stop the webinar. I hope everyone is doing well during this new semi-lockdown. Well, at least in the Netherlands, that is. Yeah, well, it seems at least in the Netherlands, constant change is the new normal. I think it's needless to say that organizations need to change as well in these strange times. And that's why we wanted to host a webinar focused on change management, HR change management, of course. And when hosting an online event like this, you always, of course, want the best kind of speakers there are around. And I think with Suzanne, we found one. I think she's one of the best change managers in HR in the Netherlands. But before introducing our keynote speaker even further, I want to mention two things. This webinar will be recorded and will be shared with you, I think, the beginning of next week. I've got a lot of questions about it. So it will be recorded and will be shared with you at the beginning of next week. And also there is room to ask questions at the end of the presentation. Please, if you have questions during the presentation, use the Q&A box in the bottom of your screen. And my colleague Christian will be handling those questions at the end of the presentation. But so during the presentations, please ask them. Now back to Suzanne, of course, our keynote speaker. Very happy and pleased to have Suzanne in this webinar. Suzanne worked as an HR manager for over 8 years at Philips before starting a career as an interim change professional. And she recently and successfully completed global change projects at ASML, Novartis and DSM, where she's currently still at. Yeah, without further ado, here is Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Ruud. I hope you can all hear me properly. So thank you for this really nice introduction and welcome to you all to this webinar today. Let me start with setting some expectations. So after today, I would really like you to have, let's say, 2 takeaways. And the first one is that I would like to share with you a change model that I often use, which is called the 4 balls model. And in this 4 balls model, it's a really practical way to steer you towards a change management process. And then the second takeaway for today is a list of recommendations that I have encountered throughout my 20 years experience in the field of HR and change management. So that's my expectations. Hopefully you will get some interesting insights today. And you will also see that I will be repeating myself quite often, because what I see is that a repetition of the change message for sure helps to understand and also embrace the change in the end. So let us start now. Let me start first with giving you some general recommendations. And then the first one is, just as COVID-19, change is becoming the new normal these days. So it's a continuous part of our business life. It's a constant factor, and we better get used to it and we better get prepared for it. Then the second one is that one size does not fit all. So for a good management of change, you need several ingredients. So the first one I would say is a really good why. So the story behind it and the whole change idea in itself should be really good and compelling. Then the second one, I think you need a very accurate and thorough process, a change management process. And then the third one I would say is an overview of, the third one is, let's say, a combination of the person who is doing the change. So that is the experience, it's craftsmanship, it's a personality that someone brings along. So in the end, it is true that one size does not fit all, and it really should be a tailor-made solution in the end. I also would really encourage you to ask others to help you and join you along the way. So make a multidisciplinary team. Make sure you get all the expertise that is needed. So you will have a thorough communication plan, but also think of people who can help you with data analytics, for instance. It's not something you have to do yourself. So gather expertise around you and create a multidisciplinary team. And it also makes it far more fun, of course. And then I really think you should work towards a really concrete project plan. So make sure all the activities are planned in the time. you create milestones, and you also share your successes, of course, and you also distribute responsibilities. So who is doing what? And make sure you plan it at the start of your process. And then, of course, change is not done overnight. So it's small steps, and every little step will take you along the interesting journey of change. And in order to see that it's done step by step, I really would like to ask you a small poll. And maybe I can get some support on this. Yes, thanks. So how many days do you think it takes to get adjusted to a new routine or habit? And I will give you a few seconds more. So I can see that there are probably quite some expertise. Yes, so indeed it is in average 66 days to get adjusted to a new routine. It takes in between 18 days and 254 days, but on average it's 66 days. So that with that you can of course imagine how difficult it is to actually change and to have a really big change and complex process. Delete that one. Okay, as I said, I would also like to share with you an interesting process or an interesting model that I use. And I don't want to make it too theoretical, of course, because that would not be interesting for you, I guess. But this is a tool that I often use, and it's called the 4 balls model. And it's quite practical. It's easy to use. And it is 4 balls, which is, of course, 4 steps. And with the 4 steps, you are steered throughout these 4 process steps. So the first one is the why, which is the reason of this whole change. Then the second one is the what. So make it very concrete what the current situation is and also what the desired situation should be. Then the third one is the how. What concrete activities will you be doing then in order to make sure that the change is properly done? And then the fourth one is the who, to also distribute the responsibilities and to make sure everyone is involved. And then there is a last one that I would like to add, which is the when, because in the end, I think we should all make sure that it's planned in the appropriate time and make sure that it's done at a certain moment. So let me first start with the why. And the why is, I think, the most important one and also often the most time-consuming one. We for sure need a compelling why, and it's the starting point of the whole change. It also captures the sense of urgency, which is step 1 of Kotter's famous 8-step approach. Do we believe this change? Do we understand it? Does it make sense? And it also relates to the famous Golden Circle by Simon Sinek, where also the why is centered. And Simon Sinek's is also about the why and the purpose of the whole change. So when you enter into a building of a company that's asking for some change support, you will probably get into the CEO's office and hear a great management story on why this change is really needed. And I would really like to also challenge you to do some proper research to also look at the undercurrent. The undercurrent is something that is captured with the underlying assumptions within the company. What is really going on? And really make sure that you properly research. And then the first one, the first thing I think you should do is sense. So make sure you talk to individuals, feel the vibe. What is going on? What is the culture about? What is the management? Are they capable of managing this whole change? Talk to individuals, make sure you know where the influences are, who really has the power. Mind map the entire organization. So that's the sensing part. Then I would also really encourage you to do some analysis. So you have different data. Look at, for instance, engagement surveys or motivation surveys. Look at illness ratios, lots of data to be found. Read notes of the Works Council. Make sure you know what's going on. Check on culture, labor market, for instance. And also, this is again tailor-made. For the specific change, you need a specific research. And then in the end, I would think that the whole management storyline that you heard at the beginning, the research that you have done by sensing and analyzing, and then you need some storytelling expertise coming in. So I would really also recommend you to not save any energy, time, or even money on storytelling, because in the end, I think the whole why, the compelling story, is the best starting point for your change. And in the next part, I would like to show you a small video. It's 6 minutes, so bear with me that it's 6 minutes, but it's really interesting. And it shows you an interesting, compelling story, and also shows you why this why is so important. It's the former CEO of DSM, who is telling us the story about the change of a highly polluting chemical company that DSM is, or sorry, was, and the transformation into the new organization, which is about health, nutrition, and sustainable living. So that's a huge transition. So again, take some time to listen to this great story.
We live in a nice world. There's an enormous amount of inequality. Less than 1% of the world having as much as 99% of the world. The billion richest people in the world, and many of us belong to that group, claiming that they can consume, because they do, 45% of global resources and produce 45% of global waste, leaving almost the other 50% to the other 6, later on 8 billion people. Is that fair? I've traveled with many of the people from the UN in Somalia, Ethiopia, Bangladesh. At a certain moment in a village where people are dying of the shortage of food, a mother handed over her youngest child to me, and before you know, I was standing there with the child in my arms. The 2 words that the lady spoke, 2 words which are with me for the rest of my life, I said, "You know." And I was standing there and said, "I don't know anything. I mean, what do I know? You know, when you come back in 2 years from now, I don't have 6 children anymore. You've been here in this village. You know, I know, even stronger, the world knows." The 2 words, "you know," is so true. We know what is happening. And if you then, as a company, have the abilities, if you have that, then you must use it. We were ever one of the most polluting industries or companies in the world. We transitioned from a coal mining company to a bulk chemical company. Later on, the late 90s, there was a debate in DSM whether a new transition was needed to a more greener form of chemistry. DSM acquired the biggest biotech company in the Netherlands. That's the way I came involuntarily into DSM. Being in DSM, we started the discussion with my predecessor, myself, and some of my colleagues. Will we be successful as a bulk chemical company? And my belief, maybe I was not totally objective being a biologist, my belief and my colleagues was, we will not be successful on the long run as a chemical company, a bulk chemical company. 2008, I was just CEO, and some people, especially the financial world, asked, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Contributing to a better society and make the company very successful." And people said, "Well, I hear 2 messages. Successful company, that's very good, by the way. And improving the world, it's not your task. You're not a charity foundation," which is correct. So you need to make profit as a company. You need to take care of your shareholders, which is all correct. They are wrong, in my opinion, to say that it is not our responsibility to leave a better world behind. So we entered into a new transformation, but wasn't easy. 2008, the world went into a crisis. Share prices down, profit down. Our share price dropped tremendously. We had also one time a shareholders meeting where some shareholders stood up and said, "Should we continue with all that stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, but it costs money." I said, "Yeah, but it's our responsibility." Even stronger, I think it's your responsibility also as a shareholder that our company does that. our company owned by you, or you invested in our company. And at a certain moment was a lady standing up and said, but I think it's good what he's doing. I think this is exactly our responsibility. This is the company I want to invest in. We as a company look to ourselves. Apparently we are good now in nutrition, we are good in understanding malnutrition, we are good in addressing climate change with new energies, etc. So especially in the field of climate, in the field of hunger and food, in the field of circular economy, in those domains, we can have a lot of impact. I think in 10 years from now, people will find out that those two things, doing well, doing good, must go hand in hand together. Otherwise, people don't work for your company anymore, people don't buy your products anymore, you lose your license to operate. Sometimes I predict already, looking back, sitting there with my wife and my two boys, and I don't want to regret. And if my two boys then will ask, oh, you were CEO of a big company, and what did you do with your life? I hope I will not discuss only EBITDA or share price or the profit, etc. And I hope to be able to say with the world and improving it and handing it over to you that you can continue that journey and live happily here together with your children. And I realize I need to act now to be able to tell that story which I want at that moment in time. That drives me, I think.
Okay, guys, thank you for taking the time to listen to this beautiful story. It's DSM's former CEO, and I'm currently working for this company, and it's a huge change, and it's, I think, a big and interesting example of how an interesting and compelling story is and how it can work in changing the whole, in helping you to process the change. So, having talked about the why intensely, I would like to continue with the what. So in this part, we want to make it very concrete on what the current situation is and what the desired situation is going to look like. And then also, not only that, we want to for sure measure the success in the out. In the next slide, I would like to show you a real business case that I've encountered. It's about Novartis. And Novartis, I don't know if you know this company, it's a big pharmaceutical company. I think more than 1 billion people are using medication from this company. And in the Netherlands, there is an office, of course, with 400 professionals, highly skilled professionals, big social cohesion, business is doing great. And at the same time, the building that we were working in was extremely old. So the sense of urgency to relocate was quite high. So we made it quite concrete what the change would be. And that was to transfer the business 100 kilometers in the Netherlands without any business disruption, maintaining the high level of critical competences, while taking along as much motivated employees as possible in the best long-term and sustainable and healthy way, and also prepare employees at the same time for a fully different way of working. And you can imagine that this is quite a big change, and it's also a very complex change. So what we then did is we split this whole total change process up in smaller change challenges, let's say so. And let me, for example, take one to see how we can make it far more concrete to make it this what. So I'll take this one. We prepare our employees for a fully different way of working, and that was activity-based working. And I don't know if you know activity-based working, but it's your building is spread with different areas in which different activities can be done. So for instance, there's a concentration area, there is a library, there's a social area, and there is a collaboration area. So that's completely different from what the current situation is, which is an old building, quite outdated offices, and everyone having their own individual office. There was still a lot of paper used, and also this resulted in a low workplace satisfaction. And then we had to go to make it very concrete, a new building, which was becoming a great place to work, hopefully, open-spaced, activity-based way of working, and then fully digitalized, so no more paper, and this all should result in a high workplace satisfaction. And I can also imagine that you now think, okay, but how are we going to do this? And this, in the how part, it all comes together. So you have this compelling why, you have this story, you did lots of research on, for instance, your stakeholders, etc. You also had a concrete what, so what is the current situation and what is the desired situation? And we now move into concrete activities on what to be done. So what steps to take in order to really manage this change. And in order to do so, I would like to introduce a new concept, which is called change colors. And it has a little bit to do, at least it looks a little bit like the disc colors that you might know, but it is a different approach. And I will introduce them to you. So you can imagine that all people are different and each one is best approached in a different way. So if you look at all those stakeholders and you have all of these different population groups, then you can also think of different ways of how to approach these people. So the first one is the blue approach. It's people who are best served with a planned, rational approach. So you can think of things like checklists or lots of information, rational arguments, good stories, but also, let's say, calculation tools on how the impact will be. A red approach is a more social, people-oriented approach. So you will for sure get a relationship first before you might take people along your change. The green approach says that change is done by learning. So in this approach, you can think of things like teaching people how to do things differently, or do it via workshops or experiments, etc. In a yellow approach, we use negotiation to persuade the other. And in this case, you could think of things like a works council process in which you negotiate the outcomes of a social plan. And then the latter one, the white one, is, I would say, one of the most important ones. It's the non-planned approach. So it's organic. So you should really be flexible along the way. So what I suggested in the beginning, make a whole plan of activities, but also do not be afraid to change the activities along the way, because you for sure will have dialogue. If you have a red approach, for instance, you will have dialogues with your people, and you will for sure know how to steer this list of activities. So be flexible along the way. Which can also be very interesting if you are a change manager yourself, is to also look at your own preference of color. And you can do that on this site, Zijnstra Gudde, and you can test your own preference and see how this also impacts your approach to the change management process. And just to give you a little bit of insight into what this now looks like, this whole coloring part, in the end, it's really interesting to have a full change management plan with the what, the how, the who, and the when, and then also include various colors, as you can see. And I can imagine that you cannot read this. That's also not the intention, because on the next slide, I would like to give you a bit more insight into this coloring part. And it really helped me to have various approaches and to take these small steps with the various stakeholders. Okay, so in this change that I just talked about at Novartis Pharmaceuticals, we had several, of course, activities, and I will highlight a few. So this is only a few of the total. The day after the announcement, we had breakfast walk-in sessions with the CEO. And this is a very red-oriented approach. So there was no agenda. Everyone could just walk in. There was a moment to reflect. There was a moment to also talk about hesitations or concerns that were there. So really a red-oriented approach. What we also did, we created a focus group with voluntarily people that could be in the group to also help co-create this whole activity-based working area. So you can imagine that when you start, there's nothing, and you need to define areas, but also we needed to define what behavior is at what areas. And we had a focus group who really experimented and also thought of the different areas, and were also really in these areas before the others. So a really green oriented approach. And then we also had a bus tour to the new office, which was a very fun one, by the way. And it's actually a combination of different approaches. So it's a white one because it actually wasn't planned, but also on this day, we had several workshops, which is more green, but also lots of information, which is more blue. So a combination of colors can also be in these activities. Okay, and then don't forget to communicate. So you have this draft plan, and 80 is prachtig, it's a Dutch expression. So 80% is sufficient. If you already have a draft change management plan, please don't forget to communicate, and also use various channels to communicate. So you can have these breakfast sessions, but you can also have, let's say, weekly newsletters to spread information. What else? You can just come together, you can have one-on-one sessions, and of course there's so many ways to communicate, and that's also why I think a communication expert should really be in your core team. Let me then continue with the who, and we already discussed it. It came along in the story already a few times, but one of the things that I encountered is, and maybe it's an easy one, but include all your layers. So also all your management layers. I once had a change management process where we did not include one management layer, and there was a good reason not to. But in the end, it was a big mistake, because you just miss an entire layer under the management layer that is not able to join this change. So please include everyone. And then if you have a proper stakeholder analysis, you also use different channels to get to those, and use different colors, as I already mentioned. And then the last one, I think I also mentioned this one, make sure there's a big team helping you, lots of expertise coming in, and also make sure that management in the lead. I see change management also as a facilitation position. It's not that you that needs to be doing everything yourself. And then this one, we often forget it, but don't forget to celebrate success. There are so many steps to take, and also so many people involved, and don't forget to celebrate when you have some successes. And then I am almost at the end of my, let's say, story. I hope it was a compelling story, by the way. And again, I hope you still have the 2 takeaways inside. So the first one was the 4 balls model that I want to share, which is a very practical tool. And the second one is, let's say, a list of recommendations that I wanted to show you. And I've recapped them on this slide. I won't go through them again, but you will probably receive the slides after this webinar. So that's it from my side for now. Thank you all for watching. I will hand it over to Christian, who will now be doing the Q&A, I guess. All right, Christian, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yep, so we've had a couple of questions come in already. And of course, if you have anything, please feel free to answer in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get around to as much as possible. But I guess to kick things off, Suzanne, we actually have a couple of questions around your color coding and personality types. So a bit of a longer one here, but if you'll bear with me. So what influenced the choice of colors in the change model? There are a number of psychometric instruments using similar colors, e.g. Insights and Jungian-based and Lumina humanistic, where their colors are the same, even if the language is different in them. But here, the change model that you're using uses almost the same colors with a different focus. This cuts across, also feels this cuts across de Bono hats, I'm not sure what that means, sorry, in the use of the colors and definition. why not aim for consistency to help understanding and maximize links with other products? So I guess, around your own system and how you've tailored that in previous systems that have been used before.
Well, let me say that it's not my system. So it's a system that is from Kaluwe and from Maak. So I also mentioned it. It's on, I didn't tell you so, but it's on the bottom of the slide. So it's not mine. And I think in the end, it's not, I would say, just as the change management model in itself, it's not about what model you use. Actually, my message is make sure that you have a very diverse offering of different activities, that you tailor make it, and that you also look at the stakeholder groups and approach them in a different way. And I wouldn't mind using another, let's say, model or other coloring in that.
Thank you. We also have, with respect to the how approach that you've taken, what is your view in driving change in the current situation where COVID rules the coming year and we are all massively working on a remote basis?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the whole world has changed, and I think we are encountering now that we all do it differently. And it also helps us to be more creative, and it for sure needs to be more creative now. So yes, it's going to be more challenging, but on the other hand, I also see so many new initiatives pop up, and they're very creative, and we just need to see that this is an additional challenge that's popping in. But on the other hand, I also see that there are lots of different new solutions for that, such as these webinars. And of course, they were already there, but they're now also popping up and making things like a webinar more interesting and more playful. That's a challenge in itself. So yeah, it's a challenge, but yeah, it's not undoable, I would say. And it's also the new normal. So we'd better get used to that as well with our creativity.
Yeah, thank you. And could you tell us what the why was from your side within the Novartis case?
Yeah, the why. So that is a very good question, because in the end, of course, it's really nice to say that we always need a compelling why. And sometimes we are just forced to change something. So for instance, in a reorganization situation, it's just a message that's not the best one. So what we then for sure need to do is, we cannot change the story in itself, but what we do need to do is prepare our management to have the same story and also tell their own story, repeat the message often to make it very consistent. And then also afterwards, make sure that the whole process is done well, but you cannot always make, of course, a compelling why. I do believe that also in messaging that is not so nice or interesting or let's say helpful in embracing it, we always can use storytelling. So make sure that your communications expert help to make it as compelling as possible.
Thank you. And another one, how do you keep your ear to the ground, so to speak, on what needs to change in our current environment, filled with the need to constantly change?
Sorry, can you repeat it again? I don't think I...
Yeah, so how do you, I guess, how do you keep on top of, the changing environment and what does need to change, within current events and modern business practices?
Yeah, I think so. There's lots offered in information sharing. So I think if you're really interested in the whole topic of change management, you just need to keep up. You need to listen to these sorts of webinars and read a lot. So there's a lot going on in the world, but there's also a lot offered to us, right?
Sure. And I got another question. Hi, Suzanne. When making use of colors, do you divide all employees in colors up front, or do you organize different activities for the several colors?
Yeah, I would say the last one. So I wouldn't like on an individual basis color everyone. That would not be needed, I guess. But I think it's about thinking about offering different approaches, because everyone is different. That's the key message in the end.
Okay, and I've got another one here. Do you adjust your communication strategy to color coding? Any interesting examples of creative communication based on different colors?
Yeah, I think I already gave a few examples. So yeah, so I think that's basically it. I would say that some people are best, let's say, convinced with rational arguments, or let's say checklists, etc., and others need a one-on-one conversation in order to first have a, let's say, relationship build up and really connect to someone before they can understand it or even embrace the change. So I guess, yeah, that would be it.
Thanks. And we have another one. My organization is a result of a merge of 4 organizations. Communication is very important because there is an us and them culture. What are the obstacles that I should keep in mind? Should we concentrate us on the culture first before we start with change management?
Should we what? Should we focus on us?
Yeah, should we concentrate us on the culture? I think maybe the first part of the culture they mean, before we start with change management, or maybe, you know, focusing on changing that particular us and them culture.
Yeah, so that's a big question. I would say, first of all, I would check if there is some change management expertise in your company, because this is a big and complex change management issue. And I would start with what I already suggested, with doing some research. So what is the us culture? What is the we culture? But also what is the current situation? So that would be the current situation, but also where do you want to go to? So I think it's quite a complex question that cannot be easily answered. But I hope that today, with the 4 balls model, but also the steps to take, you get some insights on how you could let's say, process such a change management part. But it's quite challenging, and I would really recommend to have a proper change manager to have a look at these kinds of complex change management processes.
Thank you. And can you share an example of a change initiative that didn't work, and share why it didn't?
That's a good one. Yeah, so I would say there are parts that were not successful. One of the things that I thought was really a failure, and I think I already told you in the whole story, is that we skipped one management layer in the whole prep sessions for a change project that I have done. And that is something that was flashing back to us every time. So that is something that was really, really unsuccessful.
Thank you. And I've got another one here. How about the personal change curve? Can you say something about the people journey with change, and what to do when your colleagues stay in the denial state for too long?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's about, I would say, resistance. So some people say that resistance is there when the change management is not done properly, or the process is not done properly. I would say that's not true, in my opinion. But I do think that when there is resistance, that you should go there. So talk to these individuals, go to the problem and don't avoid it. Go to these individuals, talk to them, see what's going on, and also listen to them, and maybe even adjust your plan. So don't go around it, but go towards it and try to solve it as good as possible.
Great. And I think we have time for one last question here. How do you make sure it's not a management show, but that all levels of the organization feel included? Oftentimes that is a pitfall during a project, and although the team feels they are included, the employees feel that they are not.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's true. One of the recommendations I think I gave is to have a multidisciplinary team. So make sure that you have several people in your team. So that's not only management, but these are expertise that you can use from the organization. And also things like a focus group. So ask people to come in and really experience the change. And I think next to that, I would say it's also a lot about communication. So have one-to-one sessions with people, have a dialogue, ask people to come in, invite them to come along, and to also communicate about it.
Great, thank you very much. I'll hand things back over to Ruud now, and hopefully we'll have a chance to answer some more questions later, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Christian. Great job. And we still have got a lot of questions. And I want to mention, if you still have some questions, please put them in the Q&A box. and we will answer them in an email or in a web event later next week. So we will you will get the presentation, this shared presentation next week. And also, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box so we can answer them, or Suzanne can answer them, of course, next week. Well, I think we're almost done for then. A big thanks for Suzanne, a really nice and amazing presentation. Also thanks for everyone showing up, amazing numbers. And what I really liked two things about the presentation, Suzanne, I want to mention. The importance of storytelling and the why. I think DSM did a really good job, and I think that's really nice. You really, I got the goosebumps, so that's a good thing. And I think your approach, of course, the model you use is very, very good and nice, and your translation to practical examples. So that's what I really liked, and I think that will help a lot of people who joined this webinar. So big thank you, and
You're welcome.
I will get you a little
offering
present.
me the chance. Thanks.
Yeah. Big thank you also to all of the attendees, everyone who registered. Well, and that's it for now for this webinar. And we'll see you soon.